What if I told you that the biggest thing holding men back from incredible sex isn't technique, stamina, or even confidence? This episode is going to be all about taking your sex life from good enough to being that man that your partner deeply craves. Today's guest is going to completely flip your understanding of male sexuality and show you why the path to truly mind-blowing intimacy requires embracing not only control, but also surrender. Welcome back to The Naked Connection. This is the show that supports driven men to reach sexual mastery and build deep connections. I'm Kirsten, and before we go any further, please take a moment and hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss a single episode. Today, I am beyond excited to welcome Layla Martin to the show. Layla has over 20 years of tantric practice, extensive studies at Stanford University in human sexuality, and she has worked with literally tens of thousands of clients, men, women, and couples. And actually, I was one of them. I studied under her when I really started in this field of sexuality and relationships. She is also the creator of the innovative Vita method, and she is recognized as one of the world's leading authorities in sacred sexuality. Today with Layla, we are diving into why nice doesn't necessarily equal safe, how to become a multi-orgasmic man, yes, and we are going to look at the inner work that will transform you from a guy who's good enough in bed to a man who your partner craves, surrendering to your power. This conversation is going to truly challenge everything that you think you know about masculine sexuality. I cannot wait for you to experience Layla and learn. So with that, let's get some. Layla Martin, welcome to The Naked Connection. We're so happy to have you here today.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be here.
It's really an honor to have you on the show, and I know we can go in so many directions. And I'm wondering, to kick it off, specifically with men, what have you really seen as holding them back from their highest sexual expression and experience?
The thing that I see holds men back is that they don't think that they're missing anything. And the male inclination, which is really beautiful biologically, to be safe and to also do what's known. Like, I love thinking about Alison Armstrong states this in a really wonderful way. Like, if you fuck up a hunt or like if you're out in battle and you mess up, there's such deep, real consequences to that. And it's not that women don't have deep, real consequences to mothering or to, providing food and home and things like that. But it's not the same level of protectionism and a deeply ingrained feeling that to be successful, I need to be in a level of mastery, right? And that's so much more of the masculine experience. If you think of typical masculine things like playing sports or being a warrior, being a Navy SEAL, or like flying a plane, things like that, it's like there's no room for error. But what happens is that can make men, as like in what I've seen compared to women, more risk averse and more unwilling to try something when they don't have the exact map of how to be fully successful. So what I see a lot of men get into, especially in sex, is I figured out how to do it pretty good. like, and if you're a good lover, right? I figured out how to give her an orgasm. I figured out how to last a reasonable amount of time. I figured out how to give good oral sex. Why in God's name would I start opening up like a whole bag of the unknown? And this can sit very, very deep in the nervous system. And so what I find is a lot of men will say, this isn't broke. Why would I try and fix it? Or, if I'm comfortable with who I am as a lover right now, why would I even try and challenge myself to do anything more? And what I find is that the feminine orientation towards sexuality actually serves them a lot more. This desire for more, this desire to expand. I want more orgasms, more ecstasy, more God, more surrender, right? And so there is in this particular domain it's like women in general, and you can't generalize to any one individual, but I will say women generally are a lot hungrier and more willing to experiment with sexuality. I also think that women have a lot more of a natural social sense that they got the short end of the stick, right? We were like, well, I got denied so much of the political, economic, and social power for a long time. So like, fuck it, I don't have that much to lose. Whereas what I've seen is that men have also been dehumanized, denied true spiritual power, denied their authentic inner connection to their warrior power, but they are often less aware of that they actually also carry this signature of trauma. And what a lot of people don't realize is some of the first witches that got hung or tortured in the witch hunts were actually men. And so men have actually been persecuted for their spiritual power, for their authority, for their willingness to step up and use their voice. And a lot of men have actually been silenced in ways that they don't fully understand. So what holds men back as well is this not fully realizing how much the last few thousand years of humans existing more in a trauma survival state than in a thriving state has also impacted their nervous system. So it's like an unwillingness at first to open the gates of what is energy? What is sacred sexuality? What are these deeper states of ecstasy? What could happen if I opened the power of my testicles and use that to fuel these like powerful states of sexual wonder, right? It's like, but why? Like what I'm doing is great. And so this sort of feeling like I know sex and I feel comfortable in the known and going into the unknown is not worth it, is what I see is like the fundamental block for most men.
You guys, smooth sack summer is officially here. And if your grooming game has been lacking lately, this is going to be your wake-up call to level up your self-care routine. But here's what I love about this year's campaign with Manscaped. It's not just about staying smooth, it's about doing something meaningful too. I partnered with Manscaped and the Testicular Cancer Society to bring awareness to men's health while helping you take better care of yourself. So let me tell you about this special edition bundle. The Manscaped Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra is in a fresh purple design and the ultra comfy TCS Boxers 2.0. Look, as someone who works with men's sexuality every day, I know that confidence starts with how you feel about your body, and proper grooming is part of that. Here's the real reason this all matters. Every purchase made will help raise awareness for testicular cancer, which is the most common cancer in men ages 15 to 35. Manscaped has donated over $50,000 to the Testicular Cancer Society, and I'm really proud to talk about something that literally saves lives. You see, routine self-checks matter. Early detection matters, and talking about it, that matters too. So join over 12 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped and use code NAKED15 for 15% off your entire order at manscaped.com. Your confidence and your health are worth the investment. Again, visit manscaped.com and use code NAKED15 for 15% off your entire order. And with that, let's get back to this week's episode. So many men that I have spoken with and work with are like, yeah, it's not broken. Why are we trying to fix this? Like, there's nothing to need to be fixed. And so it's more looking at it from the lens of it's not broken. So how can we just like build something even bigger and better?
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that sometimes, you know, hearing like words like sacred sexuality, it can feel like woo woo and spiritual or like feminine. And they're like, what do I do with that?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
And men have been very socialized to believe, our whole culture has been socialized to believe that men are simple and their sexual functioning is simple. And this is a huge disservice because my partner, my beloved, he is very alpha male. He is Persian. He is proudly Persian. He loves going to the gym. He is a doctor. He's a medical doctor. He's an anesthesiologist. So he works with like life and death on a daily basis in his career. And he started studying Tantra 20 years ago. So what I see is that he is multi-orgasmic. He is fluent in the energy realms. He is deep in the world of spiritual exploration and expansion. And he has become more masculine and more powerful through finding the places where his surrender actually gives him a greater sense of power. So control is actually not that powerful. If you only feel powerful, if you're in control, then your power is very dependent on external circumstances. And I think a lot of men mistake control over a situation for true inner power. And what I've really learned in experiencing my beloved is how a man can touch surrender, right? There is a way in which being multi-orgasmic requires a certain surrender to the energy surging through your body, a certain surrender to pleasure moving through you, and how even being in your spiritual power requires a certain amount of surrender to the great oneness, or even, having him learn to surrender to the domains in which my intuition and my feminine gifts are rightly guiding us, while still holding the domains that are his rightly as a man to own, where he is making his decisions, where he is in his power. And I think for a lot of men, this idea of surrendering to energy, or like, what the hell is energy even, or surrendering to the pulsation of pleasure within you, has an association with only being the domain of the feminine. But what I've seen is for this next level of man who is a warrior and who is integrated, right? He's got his sex, his heart, and his spiritual power all aligned. That surrender is an essential part of the path, but not the only path. It's like the surrender teaches you power, and your power grows so that you can surrender even more. And that this is kind of a hidden teaching for male sexuality, because so much of what we're told is that male sexual power is about control, and male sexual mastery is about control. And that's a lot of what you see in pornography. And what I wish I could tell all men, especially men who watch a lot of pornography, is that the things that you see being done to women, and I'm doing air quotes right now for those of you who are watching the video version of this, is what the feminine some feminine can desire in their greatest states of ecstasy and love. So if I am in love with my man and in awe of him and in reverence of his body and his being and his consciousness, I will want him to ejaculate on my face, because his ejaculation is so sexy to me, right? I will want to surrender to power play. And not all women want this. I'm not saying that, but I can want to be held down, or have my hair pulled, but by a man who is connected to his heart, who I am deeply in love with. And what I think is so sad about the world of pornography is that this has been co-opted to men doing it to women who kind of don't really want it. And what I have seen in men who have done this work is what they're really craving in their soul is to be with a woman who wants them so much, who's so opened by their sexual power, who's so desirous and in love that she gets to the state of wanting the wild expression, of wanting whatever that looks like to her, right? And there's this mass hypnosis going on that you have to take that from a woman, and it doesn't actually feel that good when you're taking it from her. What I feel that men's souls are hungry for is for the feminine to want it, because she is that devotional, enraptured, in love with you. And that comes from safety and presence and power. So there's also what I'm seeing, this mass hypnosis of generations of men happening, where what they're being told they want sexually is like a delusion, because it's surface and it's missing what their souls are actually craving. And so if we could actually learn this way of making love, men can be so filled from the inside out by the sexual gifts of their partner, but we're being brainwashed as a society, actually out of having those kinds of sexual experiences.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like we as women want to give that as opposed to it being kind of taken from us. And it feels like so opposite in some ways, in the sense of even thinking about like this control. And I have even experienced when I, in a sexual setting, have like fully relinquished control, that actually feels like really powerful in a strange way. And so there's like so many of these almost like backwards ways of thinking that are going on, and even going back to the beginning of thinking about, okay, well, if it isn't broken, why fix it? Where does one even just begin? Because maybe someone's listening and he's like, whoa, I want my woman to want me to do all of these things to her, and like to actually feel the difference of like a woman that is wanting to be devoured, or wanting to have ejaculate on her face, or wanting to just, totally surrender. Like there's such a difference when a man can experience the feeling of a woman who's like desiring that as opposed to taking. If they're like, let's go, I'm here for this, how do we even begin to dip our toes into like really reversing some of like I don't even know, like the psychology of what has been unfolding for so long?
Yeah. So both people are responsible for getting to that state, right? And so there is also, and I'll speak to that, a lot of resistance and blockage and fear in women as well to getting to that. So it's not all just on men. But if we're just going to talk about what you as a man can do, the first foundational piece is safety. And safety is not registered through nice. I don't feel safe with a nice man. I feel safe with a present man who has integrity and who has values and who knows how to create a container. That's what true safety is. I feel safe with a man who knows his strength and is a protector. So a lot of the time, I think in modern society, we've mistaken nice with safe. Nice is not actually that safe, right? Someone breaks into your home, being nice is not what makes you feel safe, right? You want protector, but you also want presence. So part of being an amazing lover is your self-work first. And this is why this movement now that's really gaining steam of men being in men's groups, of getting real feedback from other powerful men that they respect, and from doing practices from meditation to ice baths to, challenging physical experiences that put you in your body. That is an aspect of it. Another aspect of it is being safe to yourself. So this is what a lot of men miss. It's not just being in touch with your emotions. It is loving yourself and recognizing that all of us, regardless of gender, have hurt little sensitive parts of us. And every man actually has to learn to be a divine father to his inner little boy. The most powerful men, what really blew my mind when I was, I had left a long-term partnership and I dated lots, had a period of dating like quite regularly. And I dated, and I only say this because it's instructive of how much men can be hurting out there, like NBA players and, titans of business and men with private planes and, celebrity men and all of that. And all of them were still scared a lot of the time. All of them still felt unworthy a lot of the time. A lot of them were still trying to find their place in society right now. It's truly a confusing, strange time to be a man, even if you're trying to live a life of integrity and goodness. And what I saw was that very few of those men had ever slowed down to really love the inner boy in them, or even the infant in them, and to reparent him and love him and hear him if he'd been bullied or he'd been abused or mistreated, or just no matter how good and kind your parents are, they still messed up sometimes, and to love him the way that he deserves to be loved. When you learn to love the inner parts of you such that you feel safe to yourself, you will start to be able to show up in a way that your partner feels safe with you. So this inner work comes first. And that basic, it sounds so simple, but being able to love the vulnerable, soft, tender, hurt, scared parts of you is actually more important than any fancy breath technique you could ever learn or any kind of fancy energy technique you could ever learn. Once you have that foundation of meditation, meaning I can be present to what I'm feeling, and integrity, meaning I tell myself the truth inside about what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. And I tell myself the truth about how I'm feeling. And I learn to love these inner parts of myself. This foundational work creates a nervous system that feels safe to your partner. And that's the kind of nervous system where you start to relax around your partner and be like, oh, wow, okay. This is like, let's say the opposite of a man who is in his head all the time, driven by his head, has never done work to love inner or sensitive parts of himself, who still thinks that controlling his external environment is where the true source of his power comes from. My body is not going to respond to that with like, oh, yes, like give it to me. And so doing that foundational self-work is a huge, it's the first step. From there, then learning orgasmic practices. So how to work with your pelvic floor to make your sexual turn on move up and through you rather than down and out. Learning how to become multi-orgasmic, because these states of desire and surrender in the feminine, they don't come fast. So you can have hot, fast sex, and nobody's trying to take that away from anybody. We're busy. It's great sometimes. You want to do that sometimes. But if I'm going to get to a state where I am having like 20 minutes of deep orgasmic experiences, where I'm having cervical orgasms, where I am drenched in ecstasy, that takes an hour. And you don't have to have an hour of sex every time. Nobody has time for that anymore. But you can have an hour of sex once a week or even once a month. If you are giving that kind of lovemaking full attention, full presence, full devotion, and like, I want my partner to have as many deep ecstatic experiences as possible. And I am here and present with no agenda, but with the desire to serve her highest ecstasy. Even just doing that, like really intentionally once a month, is so profoundly satisfying. Plus, if you do that, that's going to change how you make love and even the faster, quicker experiences. So then learning those tools and practices to become multi-orgasmic allows you to be in lovemaking long enough that you're not ejaculating after 4 or 5 minutes of intensity, even 10 minutes of intensity. You can slow down and make love with your partner in a much deeper, intentional way. And this allows, like, as the feminine, what it feels like is I have my first layer of pleasure. But if you stay with me through that and keep going without pushing, there's another layer of pleasure that unlocks. And if you keep staying with me and keep going, there's another layer of pleasure that unlocks. So you want to actually be in the capacity to make love such that your partner can keep touching these deeper levels of pleasure. That actually is what unlocks ecstasy. It's like you get sexually high on your own nervous system and your own energy. And the higher you get, the more you want to surrender. So that's why training in these skills allows your feminine partner to unlock the deepest layers of her sexual capacity. And on the feminine side, then you have to be willing, once you know that your man is reasonably trustworthy, but what I'm trying to say is nobody's 100% safe all the time. Nobody's 100% present. Nobody's 100% always honest, always in integrity. I'm not talking lying. I mean, in the most subtle of ways. And so when you have a reasonable, good man who is doing the work, who is safe, then it's also on us as the feminine to uncover where we have these embedded layers of I'm not safe, I don't trust. I can't tell you how many women I've worked with and couples I've worked with that have been together for 20 plus years. And the wife eventually is like, holy shit, I've been looking for the perfect husband and he's actually right in front of me. Like, women can actually do the work too, where they can see the gift of the man in front of them.
So thinking about like this first step of this process of it's funny to me. You're like, it's like this simple part of looking at your parts. And I'm like, that can be so challenging. And especially thinking if let's say then a man hasn't hasn't ever turned towards these parts of himself. Because I think sometimes we spend so much time trying to get away from the hurt, wounded parts of ourselves that we're not even necessarily conscious that they're even there. And especially if, say, a man has really removed himself from his emotions, like, I guess from your experience, maybe what have you seen any like specific elements or maybe like shame patterns or traumas specific to men that might be not like we're going on a hunt for something that might not be there, but maybe that could help them analyze or turn towards these parts of themselves and say, that is there. That is something for me to tend to look at in order to then go into this next layer of level of moving forward.
Yeah. I think a metaphor that's really helpful is, an analogy to that is instructive is it's intuitive to a lot of men that you grow and get more powerful by finding your edge, right? So if you're going to lift weights or go running, right? You want to, not all the time, but you want to go to your edge, right? You're not going to get to your highest level of strength unless you go in and you push to your edge. The edge usually hurts. The edge is usually a little bit scary. And where do you find your power? You find your power in being able to meet that edge and know that you can handle it, right? And that's not pushing yourself way beyond your edge. It's finding your edge and then finding your ability to meet it. So for a lot of men, that's very natural externally. This is the same thing internally. So it's the same kind of power, but internal rather than external, to say the edge of my discomfort is, wherever I feel shame. It's wherever I'm still holding pain inside of me. It's wherever I start to shrink and feel unworthy. And it's like, for a lot of men, they think, okay, well, the power is in just ignoring that. The power is in not paying attention to that. The power is in going into my head and trying to solve the situation. But you know that if you go in to lift weights and you're like, oh, that's going to hurt, so I'm just going to avoid the gym. There's no real power in that. And the same thing, though, actually happens internally. It's like, oh, I don't want to feel my shame. I'm just going to avoid that. There's no true power in that. So it is, having a really good coach or therapist, doing personal development work, if it's in a men's group or in retreats or workshops or doing a longer term training where you actually learn the same way that if you were going to lift weights and learn how to stay present to the edge of your comfort, you actually learn to stay present to the edge of your emotional comfort. So I have, I'm going to lean in to meeting the part of me that feels like it's in pain. I'm going to lean into the part of me that feels like it's in shame. And if I actually show up for it and love it and connect to it and stay present through it, I'm actually going to get more and more powerful in relationship to these parts of me that used to scare me. Like if I've never run before, then it's going to scare me to run 3 miles, but I'm going to feel so powerful when I meet that edge and find out I can run a marathon. It's like feeling that same way about the parts of you that you've learned to avoid because it's uncomfortable. And instead you move into them and find the power in actually connecting to them and finding your presence there and learning like, oh, this is just my hurt inner little boy. And I can actually love him. I can actually speak to him. I can tell him it's okay. I can tell him he belongs to me, that he'll always be safe with me. That actually creates more power.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I love the analogy. I was an athlete in my past life, and so love using the sports analogies because I think we so often forget that what we're talking about in terms of sex and relationships and in terms of like our psychology and our mental health, that we can also apply basic like human understandings and laws to that same area of our life. We've had a couple of guests on the show that really specialize in talking and moving through like this kind of like nice guy experience. And you mentioned that a few minutes ago. And I'm wondering, I think sometimes what can happen is a man might feel like, okay, so like, I don't want to be this nice guy, but I don't want to be an asshole. How do I find the in between here? How do I move out of just kind of being like nice and soft and move in a different direction that isn't the complete opposite? if that makes
Yeah. So both directions are actually usually trauma responses, right? So you can fight, you can flee, you can fawn. And those are all adaptive mechanisms that we have to avoid feeling scared.
sense.
So if I feel scared, one way that I can deal with that is to do what's called fawning, which is to just be really nice all the time. And that is a trauma response. I can also deal with it by lashing out, by fighting, by being an asshole, by being aggressive. Also a trauma response. I can do it by running away, by being super avoidant, by checking out, by ghosting, by being delinquent to my responsibilities. So the important thing to realize is when you're in a trauma response where you're trying to avoid feeling discomfort or pain, and none of that is particularly attractive in anybody. So, and this is something that women have to learn too, right? Just being really nice all the time is not usually the most attractive thing. What's beyond the trauma response is what's true. So part of that is actually noticing when I go into these patterns, it's because I'm trying to avoid feeling something. And you actually have to catch yourself in that moment. Notice when you're going into it. Oh, I'm doing the nice guy thing. Oh, I'm starting to become an asshole. I'm starting to run away. Why? What is the thing I actually don't want to feel? That pause is the start of change. Then when you breathe and feel the thing underneath, and that is where, yes, the tools to be with your emotions, to breathe into it, to choose to love yourself, allows you to come back home to yourself and not run off in a trauma pattern. Once you're at home inside of yourself, you can feel what's true. And so it's like not being an asshole, not being a nice guy. It's what is true. And that is a totally different way to operate. And usually it lies underneath the thing that we've been trying not to feel most of our lives. Once you feel that, you'll actually know what's true. And you might still have an experience that causes someone pain, or you might have an experience where you yourself get hurt. It doesn't protect you from the pain of life or the challenges of life. But what it does is make you feel authentic. And that authentic way of being is actually what's deeply trustworthy.
I think that whenever I have been told the truth, even if it is a really hard truth, it feels so much better than someone saying something that I know isn't real, but is maybe what I wanted to hear. And even I just think that the truth has so much power in it, even though we think that, oh, I don't want to actually share this or go there, whether it's with another person or even more so with ourselves. But the moment, like I just know in my personal life, the moment I have been more true with myself, like the easier I sit, the more comfortable I feel. I just show up differently, the more and more connected to what's true for me.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my favorite all-time quotes is from Ram Dass's teacher, Neem Karoli Baba, and it's love everybody and tell them the truth. And we also tend to cling to one side or the other. Like some people are like, this is my truth. This is my truth. This is my truth. It's like, yes, but you also have to love people enough that you are responsible for how you deliver truth. That you also have to love yourself enough that you can do what you're saying, like be honest with myself, right? If I love myself, I can also learn to tell myself the truth without going down a shame spiral or being super, super hard on myself. And we usually feel more comfortable or more at home in one or the other. And I love to always encourage myself to lean into both, right? What's the most loving thing I can do right now? And also, what is the truth? And that combination, I find, produces so much power in relating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and I guess in thinking about that, I know that you do a lot of work with couples as well. And just in thinking about as a man is moving through these like layers and experiences of stepping into a whole new world for his sexuality and his like sexual capacity, when we think about a couple, how could a man perhaps lead him and his partner into this new space together. I think I actually had a client a while back who really wanted to go into new places and was finding that his wife was pretty resistant to it. And so he felt stuck. He wanted to expand. She had these blocks up. I guess thinking about moving for a couple together, how can they do that?
Yeah. So it's really masterful to recognize resistance as fear and to start asking your partner, what are you afraid of? Or what can we do to help you feel more safe? And this is something that I had to work at a lot with my partner, right? Because we have these deeply ingrained patterns of behavior. So one of the ways that I was raised is if someone's angry, you just get angry right back at them. And then you're in a full screaming match. And so it took a long time for me to recognize anger as fear. Or if somebody's being resistant, right? The way that I was raised is you tell them to like get up, stop complaining, and like keep going. And pushing against somebody's resistance will make them more resistant, right? Resistance is a protector. If you think of any protector, if you come at a protector, they're going to protect even more intensely. So the real masterful game is to ask yourself, what are they protecting? And how could it start to feel safe for the thing that's being protected to be revealed? And I think just a basic question of, hey, I'm noticing that there's a wall up right now, and I'm curious what you might be feeling afraid of, or I'm curious what you feel like you need to protect, or I'm curious where you feel unsafe right now. This is very disarming. Another piece is to start to do, I call them rituals, right? We have a morning ritual. You do a morning ritual to set up your day for success. So I call them relationship rituals that you do to set up your relationship for success. And so having a communication ritual where you sit down and you have a format. And, you know, one of my favorite ones is fears, desires, and loves. So you spend 2 minutes usually with each question and you ask your partner, what are you afraid of? And you just ask them that same question over and over again, and you don't coach them, fix them, interrupt them. When time's up, you switch, and then your partner asks you, what are you afraid of? You do then, what do you really want? And then, what do you love about me? And so when you have a container like that, where in this container, I'm not going to pick a fight, I'm not going to get triggered at my partner, I'm not going to coach my partner, I'm going to fix my partner, you start to create a deeper way of sharing with each other that's just a little bit more safe. Or having a container for healing, right? So if someone has a lot of resistance, like one of the things that I really work with couples to do is to have a container where one of you is feeling resistant and you can actually work through that, right? You can actually say, I'm feeling resistant. Let's sit down and explore it in a deeper way where I can actually take the time to breathe and feel what's coming up for me and share it. And we can start to feel really safe together. And all of this also exists in the context of not always trying to coach or fix your partner. You want to do that work independently, like have your own coach, have your own therapist, be doing your own work to understand this. And when you come together, you're a team. Like one of you isn't trying to fix or heal the other, but you're like, hey, there's resistance here. How can we make this part of you feel safe? How can we identify what's feeling scary right now and help that part relax? Not like you have to, but it's like you're working with your partner to go that one step deeper underneath the resistance to discover what's actually there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in thinking about that ritual, I love the practice of like not providing a solution or not even responding and just sitting in the hearing and repeating the question over. I do work in a rehab center, and we do practices like this to help people really learn how to express themselves. And it's so fascinating what starts to come up when you ask someone the same question multiple times without giving any feedback, any response, just holding that space. And Like, what else do you love? What else do you love? What else do you love? And it's just, it sounds so simple and it's really magical what can start happening. So I can't even, I just thinking about inviting this into a relationship space where there is that foundation of love already established, how powerful that can be. And moving away from this space of, okay, like I'm here to fix things for you, or like I'm here to like tell you everything, and what could perhaps unfold as a result of that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think exactly. I think another piece that a lot of couples don't have that's really important is a way to meet each other outside of the mind. So those are really great exercises, starting with sharing, starting with exploring, starting verbally. And then it's really important to be able to just feel each other. And a lot can get resolved by being in a space together where you're actually not talking, you're relating. And that is what sex is. But oftentimes we get into these fixed patterns inside of sex, or we haven't created a space where we feel safe to express something that's not pleasure inside of sex. So even like a 10-minute breath work where you're breathing together and feeling, and you just go into a dynamic, like you trust the impulse of your body to roar or to pin your partner, right? And you can always have a safe word. So always a safe word. If it doesn't feel good and you want to stop, great. But this expression sometimes can cut through so much story, right? If I'm in a resistance with my partner, I can maybe talk about it until the cows come home. But if we set a timer for 10 minutes, start breathing, and I can like cry and move my body, and he can follow his impulse. This is so healing. And this is something very few of us are ever taught. So you usually have to be trained in this or have someone guide you in it to start with. But this is starting to trust the impulse of your body. And oftentimes when we open to that, parts of us that have been really sad, or parts of us that like do want to like express dominance, or parts of us that want to rage, we can let that out in a way that is safe and contained. And because we're no longer in the mind, our bodies are really starting to talk to each other. This also opens up all new kinds of possibilities in sex, because if you do that for 10 minutes in a non-sexual way, like it could be erotic, but the idea isn't that you're trying to have sex, your bodies start to trust each other a lot more. And you open this aperture into following your primal impulse, which is almost always going to be way hotter than trying to do something that you think will work in your mind.
Mm-hmm. This is reminding me, I went to Burning Man a few years ago and did a workshop where we were like really tapping into like the primal animal in us and playing with like being like a hunter or a huntress and like being the prey. And, you know, you're not talking when this is unfolding, and just like allowing yourself to like move in the way that you like your body is wanting to move, kind of in this more primal energy. And it's so interesting, like how no words have to be said in order to like really understand what's going on. So it's just, it's so fun. And I think that we just so often, especially like as we become adults, forget how to really play. And, you know, this could be really healing and powerful, and also like really playful and silly and fun. And that can also kind of create a remembering of who we are, like maybe even connecting with some of like the younger versions of ourselves together, and how healing that can be too, I would imagine.
Yeah. And this is something a lot of couples are missing. Exactly to your point, is spaces where they can be playful together and just do whatever. Like play is the spirit of, I did it because I felt like doing it. Like you're out playing and you're like, I want to dress up like a fairy. I want to make this sandcastle. I want to chase that bug, right? You're just doing whatever you feel. And we lose that, right? We're adulting so hard. We've got so much responsibility. And then also for most of us in long-term relationships, it's like, okay, we finally carved out this space for sex. Like, I want to feel some pleasure and have an orgasm, right? Which is totally understandable. But one of the things that I've noticed in my longer term couples programs is that is actually the deepest desire between couples. They want to play together, exactly like you said. And play really comes from following the impulse of your body and doing it just because. But we lose that trust because there's all these embedded fears in that of like, oh, am I going to upset my partner? Is my partner's wall going to come up? Am I going to be too intense? All of this. And so just letting yourself play together can also rebuild that trust that it's okay. Or even as a couple to get over the fear of like, okay, if something does come up and someone gets a little upset, can we navigate it really well and rebuild this trust that play is possible?
Mm-hmm. We've kind of said a few words a couple of times throughout this of like this sense of trust and really this sense of safety. And I am like just reflecting right now on how, and like it feels kind of sad, but how out in the world there is like this lack of safety and there is this lack of trust and, just like the hope that within a partnership that those two things can come to be.
Yeah.
And I think like with those two things, like then, yeah, this incredible sex becomes really possible.
And that's what I think so many men don't fully understand is how much of a gift your masculinity is and how much your partner is actually craving it. So the huge cycle of distrust we've gotten into is most women had experiences of being on this planet where they were violated, where they weren't treated well, where some man was abusive or violated a boundary or tragically did hurt them or violate them in some way. And so this female sense that can go really deep in the body of, I don't trust men, or I don't trust a man, even if you have the most amazing husband in the whole world, you can still be carrying that signature. And a lot of men now, they have this deep fear that they are going to hurt a woman, or they are going to violate, or they are going to be too much. And so what I've seen over and over again is that women are craving the true masculine. It's actually so rare right now, because if you're listening to this as a man and you have been hurt and you have lived your life to a certain degree in your head, which almost every man has, you have lost the sense of play in your life and in your relationship, you doing the work to regain that and to be a stand for that in your partnership is going to be the greatest gift to your partner. And I will speak for women when I say that we want you so much to come into your power and your play and your presence, and to be able to receive your gift, your masculine gift, sexually, emotionally, spiritually. It's one of the most precious things. And the true masculine is more rare right now on the planet than the true feminine. There's more women who have made their way back into what does authenticity look like? What is the true feminine? What is my priestess power? And we're like so waiting for more and more and more men to get there, because it is such a blessing when you show up that way. It's indescribable.
Yes. Oh, amazing. Well, Layla, thank you so much for coming on today and talking through all of this magic with everybody. Where can men find you if they want to learn more from you or explore more of what you do?
Yeah, LaylaMartin.com. So Layla, like Derek Clapton song, getting on my email list. So signing up with your email address is the best way, where I share teachings, personal stories, my podcast. I have a podcast, This Tantric Life. I have a course for men. You can also find that on my website. And you can also follow me on Instagram, the Layla Martin. Been shadow banned by Meta, so you can't search Layla Martin. It literally has to be the Layla Martin, and I will come up.
Well, you are amazing.
Those naughty women running around teaching everyone how to get back into their pleasure and power. We should definitely shut them down.
Yes. Oh, man. Well, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Kirsten. It was so lovely to be here. And thank you for the work that you're doing.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of The Naked Connection. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss another episode. Trust me on this, your sex life and that special someone in your life will thank you for it. And if you really love the show, please take a moment and leave a 5-star review or a written review and let me know what you think. It would mean so much to me and this show. Until next time, happy connecting.